Good. The challenge should be.
Okay, Rabbi Sai. Are we all ready?
Yeah.
We all ready? Poverty, portions, Purim, something like that. This is the 9th episode as we talk about the gifts of Purim, the Giving Mitzvahs. Tonight's class is sponsored by Pauline Kamen, and she's commemorating her mother's yahrzeit. The name was Rivka Bas Ze'ev. The Neshama should have an aliyah, and we should hear Besudas Tevis Amen. Okay? So, this is a very unusual Gemara. It's very unusual because Gemara is telling us all these stories and narratives. And you're like, last week we were like, okay, what was the point? But when we looked into it deeply, there was a tremendous amount of very important information that we could glean as to the definition, the jurisprudence, and the very meaning of this mitzvah. And today's Gemara is going to be even stranger on the surface. It's not going to sound like it makes any sense. But as we're going to think this through carefully, you're going to see that it makes an enormous, not only an enormous amount of sense, but it has a tremendous message, and will help us understand how this unique mitzvah functions. So, this is a new story. Gemara tells a story, a narrative. And from this narrative, we're supposed to learn something. And the story goes like this. There was a man whose name was Rabbi Bar Nachmani. He's a very holy man. He's a very, very pious man. He's a very sagacious man. A very unique person. And he was appointed the Rosh HaYeshiva, the leader of the most prominent center of Torah learning in the world at the time, which was in a Babylonian city called Pumbedisa. Pumbedisa was a very, very prominent yeshiva, a very prominent place. That's where Torah was being promulgated. And Rabbi was appointed the leader of the yeshiva, the head of the academy. Now, Rabbi was not a wealthy man. Rabbi was a man of very meager means, and he had a very important, and one could argue powerful position, but as you'll see, he maintained his very humble and austere lifestyle. Now, Rabbi has a nephew who is an orphan, and his name is Abaye. Abaye and Abaye's friend Rava are very, very famous sages. They become the next generation of leadership. First Abaye becomes the Rosh Yeshiva, then Rava becomes the Rosh Yeshiva. And we actually learned all about them in the Gemara we were learning together in Masechet Brachot, in the Gemara on the dreams. So the Gemara now tells us that Rabbi Shodar Lei Lemori Barmar. Rabbi sent, and because the subject here is Mishloach Manot, the gifts of Purim, the Purim parcels, so we have to assume that the story here is about Mishloach Manot. He sent Mori Barmar a Purim package. Now, Mori Barmar was called the Reish Galuta, or the exilarch. This was, at the time, in Babylon, the Jewish people had appointed scions from the royal Davidic dynasty, the house of David HaMelech, and these individuals would be responsible for adjudicating disputes, providing quasi-political / Torah leadership, inspired leadership, but nonetheless, they got involved in the running of the community, whereas the Rosh Yeshiva was involved in teaching Torah. That was his focus, in adjudicating and ensuring that the Bezdin functioned, and that the promulgation of Torah functioned as it should, and that there would be disciples, and there would be a future generation of teachers. Now, Mori Barmar was a very wealthy man. The exilarches, as they are known, or the Reish Galutas, as a rule, were very wealthy people, very prominent people. You know, they were engaged with political leadership of the day, and they were very much involved in public life. And many of them were extremely wealthy. Now, Rabbi has a very important position. He's the Rosh Yeshiva. He has to send the exilarch, he has to send the Reish Galusa B'Shlach Vanot. But Rabbi is a man of meager means. He's a humble station in life. I mean, he has a very important Torah position, but he doesn't behave in a way which is wealthy and luxurious. But he's sending B'Shlach Manot to Mori Barmar. Now, in the previous episode, we talked about the Mishloach Manot that was being sent, and the issue with the B'shloach Manot was it was nothing special. It's like this tough meat. It's tough meat and like some wine.
Meat.
Huh?
Leg
meat. Like, it's not, pulkas are one thing, but like leg meat, it's good for the cholent, it's good, maybe 24 hours later, it softens up a little. But this is, and he said, like, what are you doing? If you want to fulfill the mitzvah of matanot le'avyonim, okay, fine, like a poor person takes what he can get, but if you want to give, it's a little insulting, yeah. But the point is not to get taking things personal. The point was to appreciate and understand what the essence of B'shloach Manot is about. And we said, Rashi tells us the idea is to send delicacies. It's not about sending somebody his or her basic staple, the things that you need to stay alive. It's about sending nice things, You could live without chocolate, I think. But you can't live without bread, so to speak. So you have basic needs, and you have things which are not really necessary. So now we have a story which is going to tell a very, very different approach. Like, this is a polar opposite story. So Rabbi has this position of great importance on a level of spiritual leadership, but the spiritual leadership for Rabbi is not matched with any kind of wealth or affluence. Very, very modest means, very meager means. And he's sending Mishloach Manot to Mori Barmar. So who does Rabbi send? His nephew.
The big learner.
Big learner. His nephew. And he sends him. What does he send him with? He sends him with Melo Taska de Kashba. He sends him with a sack or a basket of dates. Rashi says, Taska de Kashva, Sak Mole Tamarim. Sak Mole Tamarim. Sent him a sack of dates.
It seems like a pretty good gift.
All right, that's nice, no? Sack of dates. I can use a sack of dates. And what else did he send him? Umole kosa kimcha davshuna. He sent him a cup, a chalice, that was full of flour that had been gleaned from granola, sweetened granola. Rashi tells us that what is avshuna? And by the way, the Mefarshim wonder what is the root word of the word avshuna. They don't know what the word avshuna comes from. But Rashi tells us that avshuna comes from, is what it is shenisyashvu hachitim betanor, that the wheat was dried out or cured in the oven. Roasted grain. Ba'oidan Carmel, when it was still fresh granola. So it comes with this very fresh, moist, you can't do anything with it when it's very fresh and moist, you have to roast it. But if you roast it, then it becomes like sweet granola. And Rashi says that you should know, v'kemach shalahen, that kind of flour remains matok leolam. It remains permanently sweet. That's what happens, because when you roast it, it's not a natural process of curing, but when you roast it using an unnatural process, like something that people are doing, an intervention, that you're drying it out unnaturally, then it remains sweet forever. Okay? So he sends him a sack of dates, and he sends him a chalice of the sweetened granola. Omer le Abaya, so Abaya says to him, Hashta Omer Mori, I know what Mori's going to say. Look out, like, hey, uncle, like Rabbi, I'm going to take your gift over, but I know what he's going to say. I know. I could just tell you what he's going to say. He's going to say that as soon as he gets this, he's going to say, "Ichakla malka lahevi." If a farmer rises to greatness and he becomes the king, so dikula mitzavore loy noches. He doesn't take the, so to speak, the basket off his head or off his neck. He doesn't take the basket. In other words, if to say, it's a euphemism, as if to say that Rabbi was a poor man. Rabbi was a man of simple means. So, he was I guess you would call in today's day and age, a koile younger man. He was a poor fellow. He sat and learned. That's what he did. He didn't really have he didn't have wealth. And now he's appointed to this tremendously important and powerful position. But he still behaves as a man of...
But he doesn't have wealth. He doesn't have the station with the wealth.
That's true that he doesn't have wealth. It's true that he doesn't have a great wealth. But, maybe for Purim, because this is the position that you're in, maybe you need to up the ante a little. Maybe you may spend a little more on Purim, because now you're like presidential. So if you're going to send Mishloach Manot, you got to send the Mishloach Manot that the Rosh Hashiva sends, not the Mishloach Manot that the Schlepper sends, a Koili Yungerman. Like, no, you're not the Rosh Hashiva. You got to send the proper Mishloach Manot. So he said, I know. Huh?
Why wouldn't Rabbi know that?
Why wouldn't Rabbi know
Why
that?
does Abaya know that and Rabbi doesn't?
Oh, you're going to soon see. Abaya knows it. Rava knows it. There's something very deep going on here, by the way. But on the surface, we don't know what it is yet. I'm reading the Gemara, Kipshuta. I'm just reading it to you. Now, let me share with you the words that Rashi says. Rashi says. Let me see if I have any relevant questions over here. Hello, everybody. And for you, Mr. Negative, please leave. Yeah, Mickey's there. He's going to take this guy out. I think he's here. Yeah. As they say, if you have nothing nice to say, please don't say it here. Thank you. Okay. So the Rashi says like this. Ichakla malka, if the farmer becomes a king, lahevi dikula mitzaver, it doesn't take down. So Rashi says, Hasal be'idenu ben kfar, the basket that he used to carry around when he was a simple villager, when he was like a farmer. Umachel behemtei, he would feed his animals. It doesn't take it off his head. He's still carrying it around. Kach, like you, uncle, atanasis melech, you became a proverbial melech, a king, because, the Jewish people are supposed to have a king. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. Same tasum melech melech, right? But the king. No, we are supposed to have it. It's a mitzvah, one of the 613 mitzvahs.
No. But God said, if that's what you want, okay.
Yeah, right. So this is the famous story with Shmuel HaNavi, that Shmuel HaNavi was not happy when they came and asked for a king. So the Rambam asked this question. It's actually today's Rambam, tomorrow's Rambam. And the Rambam says that the problem in the time of Shmuel HaNavi was the Jewish people didn't want to fulfill a mitzvah. They wanted to be like all the nations. Nehi kechol hagoyim beis Yisrael. We want to be like everybody else. We don't want to have a Torah leader telling us what to do. And Hashem tells Shmuel HaNavi, you think that they're sick of you? They're sick of me. They're trying to get rid of me. That's what they want. They want to throw off the yoke of heaven. Because Shmuel was very hurt by this whole thing. He devoted his whole life to the Jewish people. They say, give us a fancy king. And Shmuel said, by the way, you're going to regret what you asked for. Because the king has a lot of rights and he's going to make a lot of demands of you. And you're going to hey, where'd this guy come from? Well, so okay, that's no problem. You want a king? You're going to get a king. Just remember, this is what you asked for. And you may not like it, but it is a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah. And there was a reason. That's a much bigger discussion than this class as to why the Jewish people didn't have a king up until that point, and why there were shoftim, why there were judges, Torah leaders, but no king. But at any rate, from the time of Shaul HaMelech onwards, the Jewish people have a king. This is till the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. Nebuchadnezzar exiles Tzidkiyahu. He tries to escape in a tunnel, and he catches him, and he blinds him. It's a horrible story. You read about it in the Megillat Esther. Then the Jewish people miraculously come back to the land of Israel. And it's the first, until today, the only time that an ancient nation was exiled and came back to its land. Because in antiquity, nations rose, and they were very powerful, and then they were vanquished. When the nations were vanquished, they disintegrated. They became assimilated, they disintegrated. For example, there are no Romans.
But there are Assyrians.
Very small, very cultural, tiny cultural group. A tiny cultural group. Tiny cultural group, not really a nation. It's a tiny cultural group. So, and the nations never came back and reestablished self-determination and governance and so on and so forth. But the Jewish people did come back to Eretz Yisrael. And that was an extraordinary event, an extraordinary thing. It was like a miraculous thing. And that's when we become really an eternal nation, right? When we come back to the land of Israel. And we're supposed to appoint a king. The problem was, we didn't really have self-determination. We weren't really governing ourselves. We were a vassal state. Koresh, or Cyrus II, was governing us. So he gave us permission. He created the Cyrus cylinder, which they found at the turn of the last century, which in Hashem's sense of humor is in the United Nations today. The Cyrus cylinder in the United Nations, saying that the Jewish people could come back to the land of Israel exactly as described in the Bible. But of course, since Cyrus is a Jew and his mother's Jewish, he doesn't want to say it openly. He says nations should come back to reestablish themselves, and it's all euphemistic, and it's all I think Cholent arrived.
No, it's not hot. Thank you anyway.
Okay, I guess no Cholent. At any rate, it wasn't possible to establish themselves a monarchy. Cyrus wasn't going to have a monarchy under him. He was the monarch. What kind of currency did they use? They used Persian currency. And then when Alexander the Great vanquished all of these other kingdoms around him, and Macedonia became Greece, and then he went and marched on the rest of Eurasia, and he conquered the Persians and the Medians, so Eretz Yisrael falls under the sway of Alexander. Oh, good. And Alexander, as everybody knows, dies at a very, very young age. 33 years old. He gets a fever, and he becomes comatose, and he, can't speak. And 3 days later, they believe he's dead. And his generals start fighting. His generals are killing each other. In the end, the massive Greek Macedonian Empire divides in two. So, of course, there's a struggle over who will control Eretz Yisrael, and Ptolemy has North Africa, and at that time, the Seleucids end up controlling the land of Israel. And that's the story of Hanukkah, and that's Antiochus. Now, after the story of Hanukkah, really and truly, for the first time in centuries, the Jewish people had the possibility of true self-determination. And of course, they were supposed to appoint a Melech, Beis David, and they could have, because there was people who were, and they blew it. This is when the Hashmonaim blew it. The Hashmonaim, the Hasmonean family, saved us, and then they kind of buried us, because they couldn't let go of the power. And this is like, it's very tempting. Power is a very difficult thing, and they couldn't let go of the power. So they maintained not only the kahuna, not only the priesthood, but they also wanted to hold on to monarchy. And because of that, at a certain point, the sages realized that this wasn't going to change. The latter generations of Hasmoneans were not pious and were not righteous. There was no way they were letting go of power. And they were dominated mostly by the Sadducees and non-Torah Jews, very wealthy, politically connected, but not inspired and not living righteous lives. So what happened is they coined a phrase to reflect the new, sad, but the realism they had to live with. And that was, Man Malki, who is for us royalty? They realized there's not going to be another king. Till Mashiach comes, there's not going to be another king. It's not going to happen. Who is royalty? Man Malki. They said the Rabbanon, the sages. And who became that royal figure? Who became that royal figure? His name was Hillel. And Hillel was maternally descended from the house of David HaMelech. So his mother was from Beis David. The truth is that he could not be a king because he wasn't paternally from Malchus Beis David. And there are families that trace their paternity back to Malchus Beis David. There were various illustrious families in Europe and in Sfarad who knew that they came paternally back from David HaMelech. The Rambam comes from David HaMelech. He knows this. Rambam knows his lineage. Abarbanel, Dan Yitzchak Abarbanel knows his lineage. Goes back to David HaMelech. The Altshuler family, the Mitzudas David, Mitzudas Tzion. The Altshuler family has a direct paternal line that goes back to David HaMelech. Incidentally, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe, his father, Shalom Shachna, was an Altshuler.
Oh, wow.
He has direct Davidic line, so a patriarchal line back to David HaMelech. Now the Altshuler family was known. So there were families, the Luria family, the families that knew they had. At any rate, they could have had a king. They didn't have a king. So they said, Man Malki, who is the king now? Who is for us royalty? Rabbanan, the sages. And that's where something called the Nisiyut was created, where we had a new term. Hillel was called Hillel, but his subsequent generations were known as Rabban. Rabban was a new word, a new phrase, and it was a conjunction of Rebbe and Nasi, Rabban. And the only one who wasn't from the Hillelite family that got the name Rabban was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, because at the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, where there was ineffectual leadership that was coming from the grandson of Hillel, or the son of Hillel, Shimon. So that at that time, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai temporarily steps in. Anyway, why am I sharing all of this? I'm sharing this because you have to understand that when Abaya refers to Rava and he says the farmer became a king, it's not a joke. It's a euphemism. He's borrowing phraseology of the day, but he means this seriously, because the Torah leader, especially when it was an uncontested, widely acclaimed Torah leadership, they looked at him as royal. He was royalty. That was for us royalty. That was our melech. He didn't have a scepter. He didn't command an army. He didn't mint currency. He didn't enact laws. And yet, he had greater loyalty than so many kings who were busy holding on to their crowns desperately with through brute force and so on and so forth. Do we have a question over here? So the answer to your question is have a little patience, and you'll see soon about how this works out into Mishloach Manot. This is very, very, very much on point with Mishloach Manot, as you're going to see. So Rava says, and this is what Abaya says. He says that this basket, which the farmer, meaning the simpleton, was carrying around, now kach ata nasa melech, you're the melech, kiz Rabbi, you're the head of the yeshiva, you're the acclaimed Torah leader of the Jewish people, Reish Pumpadisa, in Pumpadisa, ve'eincha shaleach lei, and what are you sending? What are you sending? You're not sending anything presidential. You're not sending anything royal. You're sending Mishleach Manas. You're sending a bag of peanuts. You're sending very plain. Dvarim hamitzuyin lakoil. Something which is found for everybody. Something is found for everybody. So, I'm just going to say, you're probably thinking this. Like, I don't understand what's going on over here. Rabbi calls his nephew, and he says, please bring Mishloach Manot. And Abaya is giving him like an earful. What's wrong with you, uncle? Can't give fancy Shalach Manas? Abaya, you give your Shalach Manas. You give whatever you want. It's a little bit insulting. You're a farmer. You became a king. You're giving this what kind of Mishloach Manas is this? I know what he's going to say. How do you know what he's going to say? You think Mori Barav was an insolent person? The Rosh Hashiva will send whatever the Rosh Hashiva sends. I'll take what the Rosh Hashiva sends. The Rebbe sends. The Rebbe sends. You take what the Rebbe sends. You care what? Who cares? The value is not because it's valuable because it comes from the Rebbe. That's why it's valuable. How do you know what he's going to say? Why would you even say this?
Right.
Very strange. But point is, so what happens? What actually happens? So he goes. He's sent on a mission. As the Gemara says, "Chazaka l'shliach se'eshes lichusei." A shliach does his mission. Does what he's supposed to do. So he heads off and he brings the Mishloach Manot, and the answer is yes, Yitzi. Now we'll see. Very good. Hadar shadar le'iyu. Now, Mori Barav responds. He sends back. What does he do? He says, Mela Taska de Zangvil. He sends ginger. I think that's what that's translated, yes?
Yeah.
Ginger. Sends ginger. Now, ginger was like a rare commodity. A basket full of ginger. Ginger didn't grow in Babylon. Ginger grew like in Asia, and you had to import it. It was like this fancy stuff, right? Rare material. And he sent him back, so he filled the sack with ginger, and then he filled up the same cup that he sent him, the chalice. He filled it bipilpelta aricha, with these long peppers, fancy peppers. Again, this is like fancy. This is not like from No Frills. This is like from the what's it called? Concord. The fancy.
These are the good long
This is the good long, the fancy long peppers, right? The top grade, the olive branch peppers. So like he sends them the nice ones. So Omar Abaya says to Mori, Hashta Omar Mar. Now let me tell you what Rabbi is going to say. I know what Rabbi is going to say. I know what he's going to say. Ano Shadari le Chulya. I sent him sweet things. Ve'iu Shadar li Chulfa. And he sends me back things which are sharp.
bitter.
It's not really bitter, but I'll see in a minute. So Chulya, Rashi says, it means Mesika. Sweet things. So that's what he says. That's what he says. All right. A little strange. Again, mix again. He's giving his running commentary.
Why is he even
Why
would he even have an opinion about it?
Why does Abaya have opinions?
Why?
I understand. So you're the mailman. Your job is to deliver things. Just deliver things.
And it's the Rosh Yeshiva.
The Rosh
and this
Yeshiva,
wealthy
and it's
guy.
the exarch. It's the Reish Galusa. So you're just like a young guy. Just be respectful.
Stop talking. Right.
What are you saying anything for, right? It's like when you go through the border, they don't say anything. Don't speak. Whatever they ask you, answer. That's it. Don't volunteer information. What are you speaking for? He's giving comment. Oh, I know what he's going to say. And I know what this one's going to say. How do you know? Like, what is even the point of this? And then if you think this is strange, now put your seatbelt on.
Oh, goodness.
Abaye now describes his experiences in the house of Mori Bar Mar. So Mori Bar Mar, and he stays on, I guess he stays on for the Purim Suda already. He says, you're here already, Abaye.
Have a seat.
I don't know what you're going to get to eat over there by your uncle. But he sent a bag of peanuts. Stick around here. I'll feed you nicely. So Amar Abaye said, Ki nefaki mi beimar, when I went out from the home of Rabbi, Hava Savaina. I was full. I felt full. I felt like I wasn't hungry. I wasn't hungry. Rashi says, because she had tzasi, mi beis adoini, when I went out of the house of my master, who was Rabbi, leilech lebeis Mori Bar Mar. It says, Rashi says Abba Bar Mori, but the Bach says take out the word Abba. So to go to Mori Bar Mar, he says, I was fine. I was full. And then what happened is, Kimitame lahasam. When I came over there, Karivuli shitin tzoi. They brought in front of me 60 plates, 60 courses, no portions. The shitin mini kedera, 60 different kinds of food. Man, this guy had a serious Purim Suda, right? And I ate and I ate and I ate. Va'achile bahu shitin pelugi. I ate 70 portions, 70 pieces.
Not 60?
Rashi, 60, I mean. So he says, Tz'i, Rashi says, is kaires shomini maichel, like servings, like plates, plate of different kinds of food. And he says, I ate all 60 of them. I ate 60 portions. I ate a piece of every plate. And then, ubishula basraisa, the last one, that was like the last one was havikarele tzli keder. This was like a special thing. They called it tzli keder, which Rashi tells us means there was a roast. It was roasted in its own fats. It wasn't like cooked in water. So it was like delicious basically. What they call. And it was no. He wanted to eat the plate. So good. He says. I wanted to eat the plate too because I was so hungry. I wanted to eat the plate, but I didn't eat the plate. I said I wanted to eat the plate. What is going on over here? And why is the Gemara telling this to us? So Gabai likes to talk a lot. I get that. That's what we see so far. But now he wants to eat the plate. And he comes full and he's eating and eating and eating. Who can eat 60 courses? Omar, Abaye said about this. Hainu damre inshi. This is what people say. Kofein anya velo yoda. He said that the poor man, he's hungry, but he doesn't even know he's hungry. He doesn't even know he's hungry. Inami, he said, another way of looking at this is ravcha lebisume shchiach. When something is delicious, something is very sweet, all of a sudden you thought you were full, but there's always room for dessert. There's always room. Is that Jello?
There's
always room for Jello. So they took it from the Gemara.
That's right.
Ravcha lebisume milsa. Shchiach. There's always room. If the food is delicious, there's always room. So if the food is delicious, they bring it a delicacy. Sure, sure. Always room for dessert. What in heaven just unfolded here? What is this? What is this? Rashi says, I wanted to chew on the plate. And Rashi says, obviously you can't eat a plate. That's crazy, right? So he says, anytime you eat something which is in a non-normative eating, it's called kaisis. So for example, the Gemara says that if a man is not married, so he goes out to the field and he harvests wheat, but klum adam kaisis, could a person brings home wheat, could he eat wheat? He chew on wheat? He said no. So his wife takes the wheat, makes flour, makes bread. He has bread to eat. In other words, that's the Gemara describes how each partner has their participation in making things right. That the man's job is to bring in the raw materials, and the woman develops it. And of course, this has many, many levels of understanding and dimensions. Okay, so that's about kaisis. He says, kaisis, I was going to eat the plate. So I can't eat the plate, obviously, but I was still hungry. I came full. I found that I was hungry. Everything, I kept eating and eating and eating, so much so I could eat the plate. If I could have, I would have eaten the plate. I don't know what this has. I don't know what's going on over here. We have a story we're trying to understand about Mishloach Manot. We get the story of a Rosh Hashiva who sends a modest Mishloach Manot. Okay, fine. Abaya has comments. He calls him a farmer. So what's wrong with you? Sending a farmer. The exilarch sends back this fancy stuff, takes the same package, fills it, stuffs it with all this fancy rare things, this sharp, and he's like, and he also says what to say about that. He says, oh, I said, you're sweet, you sent me sharp. And then we have this, I don't know, off the walls party where he eats and eats and eats and eats and he wants to eat the plate. Oh, really? Okay, could somebody explain what's going on over here to me? So, I thought about this for a very, very long time. And I came up with a shtickle mahalach. And then I found there's a sefer called Reach Dudoyim. And in the sefer Reach Dudoyim, he gave me some new ideas. And now I'm going to tell you pshat in the Gemara, what the pshat is. Okay, but we have to start from the top. Let's start from the top. The first thing, we're going to go back now to the dates. Back to the dates. Rashi says that what is this taska, the kashva? Sak moli tamarim. Sak moli tamarim. Now, there's a Gemara in Masechet Megillah, and over there Rashi also says tamarim. But even though Rashi says tamarim, the Tosfos is not so comfortable saying tvarim. The Tosfos says, yesh mefarshim. There is an opinion. The Gemara says that this is like it's dekel parsoi, right? There's dekel parsoi, that this is talking about the Gemara says, what the story in the Gemara in Bava Kama is, somebody went and chopped off somebody else's tree. And now the question is, how much does he owe him? So the question is how much the whole orchard is worth and how much the orchard used to produce, and then we could try to deduce from there what each tree is worth. So there's a ruling that's given, and the plaintiff is not happy. And he says, you're using Persian parliamentary law. You're not losing. If you use Torah, you come up with a different. That's what the Gemara says over there. So the question is, what was it? And Rashi says, it was a dekel. It was a date tree. A date tree. All right, fine. That's what Rashi says. So Tosfos says that it's a dekel parsoi, and he says that this is also, we see later on in the Gemara, that the Gemara says that it was an exilarch there also. The exilarch makes his calculation, and he says that he calls it taloi, and taloi ad the column. Taloi is the column. Now, of course, the problem is it taloi? Is it the column? Or is it the word we use over here? Is it a kashva, a kasba? So which one is it? Is taloi or kasba? So Tosfos says that lefima shapirach ba'aruch, according to the Aruch is a very important book of definitions, Torah definitions, written in the time of the Rishonim. He says the kasba is called a dikla parsa. It's a unique kind of date. It's a Persian date. It's a Persian date. And he says, according to what the Aruch says, this would be a little difficult because it doesn't exactly fit. That's what Tosfos says. Now the Rashba has a way of kind of reconciling. The Rashba in Masechet Bava Kama says like this. He says, I want you to know, he says, that many the kolam harbe, there are many different species of dates. V'yesh shekayrim kaspa, there are dates which are called a kashba. And yesh shekayrim taloi, and there are different dates called taloi. V'yesh shekayrim dekel, and there's some called plain dekel. There are different kind of dates. Okay, so I saw this. I saw the Rashi. I saw the Tosfos. I saw the Rashba. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, well, what is the issue? What's going on? It's kasba. It's not called kasba. It's called kasba. What difference does it make? Why are you even talking about this? So clearly, there's an issue over here. There's like something going on over here. So I was curious. I saw Persian dates. So I didn't go to ChatGPT because it will tell me Baba Mises, and I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'll never know if it's telling me stories that's not true. But if you go to just plain old Google, Google will just give you just articles, and you could see what the sources are. So the source that I looked at seemed reasonable, and I asked, what were Persian dates known for in antiquity? Because this is antiquity. What are Persian dates known for? So it came up with a whole bunch of different points. That number one, that it had agricultural and economic importance, because the date palm cultivation was essential to the economy of southern Persia. It's like this was a major product. The palm tree itself became a symbol of prosperity, peace, and friendship because of this. This is like people made a living from it. Okay, so now it's a basic staple. That's clear to me. Apparently, it has symbolism in art and in culture at the time. Like it's looked at as a generous tree, which is interesting because in Torah we also have tzaddik katam yifrach, right? So there's like, you can see the crossover in culture, civilization. Then I saw something interesting, that specific varieties, especially those that came from an area of Mesopotamia, were considered royal delicacies. So there are dates, and there are dates. It's exactly what the Rashba says, right? That's what the Rashba says. And then I found what was most interesting, that they called this was seen as, and I'm quoting, versatile nutrition. Because dates were a primary source of sweetness, people didn't have sugar. So this was a primary source of sweetness, a crucial source of iron, protein, and nutrients for workers and travelers. Basically, the energy bar of antiquity was dates. Today people grab a bar, they had a date then. And there was versatility in consumption. There was fresh dates and the dry dates. And what are the dry dates called? QASB, CASP. Now, Rav Evan Yisrael, in the Steinsaltz edition, says that kashba and kasp are the same word. It's a word in Arabic today, and it's talking about the same thing. And it's a base for many, many dishes, like modern day date paste and date syrup, so it's a basic. So this is basically because the date palm is able to thrive in hot and arid climates, right? It becomes a reliable and essential source of food in the desert regions. Okay, that's what my research comes up with. So I think what becomes clear to me is that when Rabbi sends a bag of dates, he's sending a basic staple. There's nothing, it has no frills. It's not fancy. It's not like a nice, beautiful box of chocolates. It's not like a beautiful cookies or something, fancy cake. It's basic ingredient. And he's sending the most basic kind. He's not sending the royal kind. He's sending the kashba. Kashba is basic. And what is he sending along with it? Sending along with it granola. The granola, they would harvest the granola. People didn't have time to wait until it would naturally cure. So the fast way to have granola, to be able to eat, you roasted it up, it stayed sweet, it was cured. It was cured in an unnatural way. And so he sent him basic staples. And then I started thinking like this. Okay, let's think this through. In the previous episode, the lesson that we took out about Mishloach Manot is you're not supposed to send the basic food. The whole idea is like sending something like nice stuff, right? It's nice stuff. So he was even insulted. He sent me the hard meat. But Rabbi, so in other words, in the previous episodes, in the previous story, it seems very much that the Mishloach Manot is about the recipient. Is it make the recipient feel good? If it's Matanot Levyonim, we learned in last week's class, the Evyon is happy whatever he gets. But a person who's like well-heeled, what are you sending me? What did you get for Mishloach Manot? I got a box of Cheerios. That's not Mishloach Manot. I got a loaf of bread. Who sends a loaf of bread for Mishloach Manot? Why not? You can't eat it? Yeah, I mean, you can eat it, but that's a box of Tam-Tams. You send something nice, something fancy, something exotic. That's what people that's what people tend to send. Rabbi wanted to make a point. Rabbi's point was that just because my position changes, I can give the same Mishloach Manot I gave before, because his message to people was a basic Mishloach Manot fulfills the mitzvah. Whatever you're used to giving, number one, Rabbi didn't change his lifestyle. This is a very powerful lesson.
Respect.
He became a great person, a great position. He continued to live with a very, very austere, basic lifestyle. Could have asked for a raise, very basic. Very basic. He lived the same way. His life did not change one iota from before he was an important, prominent individual to when he was just a plain Torah scholar, quiet Torah scholar. And as such, he said, Mishloach Manot is not about the recipient. Mishloach Manot is about the giver. I'm giving what I give. That's why I live my life. That's perfectly fine. So Abaya says to him, so basically, this is what they mean when they say that the farmer becomes a king, but he still lives like a farmer. He's not criticizing him. Abaya is understanding the message. He said, so this is the point. Mishloach Manot, what is Mishloach Manot? Whatever you give, it's about you. It's not. So in other words, usually giving, when it comes to giving in Yiddishkeit, it's about the recipient. It's not about the giver. It's not about the giver. Because like in other faith systems or other religions, it's about give till you're hurt. It's like an emphasis of give till you're hurt. It has to be painful. And the more you made a sacrifice, the greater it is. But in Torah, the main emphasis of tzedakah is not you. You don't count. You're not really important. What's important is the recipient. Did the recipient maintain his dignity, or did the recipient lose his dignity? Like there's 8 levels in tzedakah that the Rambam talks about. And what's the highest level of tzedakah? Anonymous. Why? Because not the highest level of tzedakah is when you gave away your own food. It's very beautiful Mesiras Nefesh. But the highest level of tzedakah is not about you. The highest level of tzedakah is about the recipient. And that's why, you know what's even higher than giving anonymous? To give somebody a loan. A free loan. Without charging interest. Why? Because then you didn't take away his dignity at all. At all. So usually that's how giving mitzvahs are about the recipient. But Mishloach Manot is actually not like that. Mishloach Manot, it's not the gift, it's about the thought. The whole idea of Mishloach Manot, Rabbi is saying, is to show that you're thinking about somebody. It's Purim, I'm thinking about you. And that's a good feeling. If you remember, I shared a story last week of this woman who wrote this article. Nobody sent Mishloach Manot. Nobody sent. They didn't get a single Mishloach Manot, and how crestfallen she was. And then they come home from the Purim Suda where they were. Her husband's like a comedian, did a gig, and there was one Mishloach Manot. The husband's mother's erstwhile, friend or something. What did she send him? Some lady in her 90s, whatever she put together. But she got Mishloach Manot. Somebody thought about me. It actually is the thought that counts. That's what Rabbi is trying to say. And Abaya is taking note of the fact that his uncle didn't change. He's like, actually, wow. You lived like a farmer, you lived Pashat, you continue to live Pashat. And he says, the Mishloach Manot, your Mishloach Manot doesn't have to change either. You have now a fancy position. Yeah, but I live like this, I'm giving what I give. It's about the giver. So it's plain dates. Plain dates. And that's why the whole discussion in the Gemara. Which kind of date is it? The kashba. If it's a tamar, if that's what it is, sakmoi tamarim, so why do you say taska the tamara? Why do you say kashba? No, because kashba was the basic date. That was the no-frills date. Basic sustenance. It wasn't a beautiful date. It wasn't a royal date. It's basic. It's a basic ingredient. And what? And granola. Granola was like Tum-Tums, whatever, just regular crackers. Nothing special. And that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point that he makes. So Mori Barav teaches us a very important lesson. Mori Barav is an extremely wealthy person. So Mori Barav is not trying to offend the Rosh Hashiva. In fact, he uses the Rosh Hashiva's sack. He appreciates that he's being thought of, that the Rosh Hashiva, the Rebbe, Rabbi Bar Nachmani sent him Mishloach Manot, he's very grateful. He takes but what does he put back inside the sack? He puts what he considers special. He is a man who's, he's well heeled. He's the exilarch. He's living a high life. He sends him back this ginger and this fancy peppers, long peppers. And it's not like bitter. It's sharp. It's a different kind of taste. He sent sweet. Sweet is basic. Sweet is not like sophisticated. Like these fancy dishes are not like,
I've gotten that from this.
But isn't it clear?
Now it is.
Yeah, I know. Now here's something else that I was thinking, and I was thinking about this. This is something that I noticed, I picked up, there's what we call Hamisha food. So Hamisha caterers, Hamisha food, they usually go to a Hamisha restaurant, the portions are big, And the food is not exotic. It's good. It's nice. It's hearty. When you go into like what we call fancy cuisine, it looks like a work of art, and it tastes exotic, but they're very small portions. They're very small portions. Like you actually come out of these things, you're hungry. Like, give me like a person, a hamisha thing. He goes, a plate full of food is hamisha food. And you go to these fancy things. It's like it's a certain lifestyle. It's a lifestyle where people are more into the style than the substance. It's not about it's about the like the fancy and food looks a certain way, and that's exactly the continuation of the story. So Abaya doesn't even know from fancy food. Abaya is a very basic guy. He eats hamisha food. He's living in his uncle's house. He's in his uncle's house. It's like it's a pashut house. It's pashut house. So living in a pashut house, he eats pashut food. He didn't even think he was hungry. Abaya wasn't a big foodie. And all of a sudden, he goes to Rabbi Nachmani and they're bringing out these dishes. It's like delicacies. Why? He eats a piece of this, he eats a piece of that. He never saw the stuff. He's eating and he's eating and he's eating. He said, wow, this is like, I didn't realize I was hungry. I could eat the plate. And it's interesting, the Marsha has a fascinating take. The Marsha says that probably the plate was made of sugar. He says like marzipan or something. Like in the Marsha's times already in Europe, they had already developed this this fine art of like sugar marzipan made out of sugar, the marzipan plate. There's a beautiful story that's told that one of the Rothschilds, they all became like secular. The German Jews, they all fell away. There was one Rothschild, Meir Anschel's grandson, who became a Baal Tshuva. And he lived, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he lived in Frankfurt. And he maintained a minyan, an observant minyan in his house. He had a minyan, he had a huge palatial house, and he had a minyan in his house. And it was from shul, and he had a rav. So, and he liked the, I guess you would call shtick. So one time he came out for Kiddush, he served everybody a large goblet of wine. Large goblet of wine. But the halacha is that to make Kiddush, you have to have Kiddush Malkim Suda. So they said to him, like, what are you doing here? Okay, you only brought the wine. You have to have some mezonot. So he said, you'll see. And everybody, he made Kiddush on the wine, and then they realized it was a very beautiful cup that was like a mezonot marzipan. So he made Kiddush on the cup, and then you ate the cup. And the cup, and this is a whole thing at the time, was a whole discussion about this, that Abanim were talking, whether this does work or whether it doesn't work. Like, why shouldn't it work? It's a kazayas. Altogether, it was a kazayas of mezanis, of this like marzipan kind of thing. So Abaya's like, I could have eaten the marzipan. I could have eaten the sugar plate. I didn't. I could have eaten that too already. Okay, I didn't even realize this. What this does for you is, it creates a contrast. This is the way I understand it on a very simple level. It creates a contrast between the kind of food that Abaya was used to eating. Very, very simple food. Nourishing food, but basic, very basic. He never saw an exotic dish in his life. And now, he's sent as a shliach to the exilarch, a man like Abaya, an orphan, a poor orphan. He never saw exotic dishes in his life probably. He never tasted anything like this. He had how was he getting to the exilarch's house? He was just an unknown yeshiva bacher. All of a sudden, his uncle's the Rebbe, his uncle's sending him, he's the shliach. And he says, come inside, have some food over here. And he starts to eat, and he's like, this is unbelievable. I thought I was full. I never saw food like this. And the point is, it creates the sharp contrast between the kind of life that Rabbi lived and the kind of life that Mari Bar Rav was living. And it gives you the understanding of Mishloach Manot. You know what works for Mishloach Manot? It works for you. You give what you give. You don't have to be. A lot of times people in Mishloach Manot, they feel bad. Somebody gives a big fancy Mishloach Manot, and then now I feel ashamed of giving them a plain. You make your Mishloach Manot. That's your Mishloach Manot. They give their Mishloach Manot. That's what it is. You don't have to feel bad about that. If somebody decides to come and bring you a big fancy Mishloach Manot, you don't have to give an equally, whatever. My wife prepares Mishloach Manot. This is our Mishloach Manot. This is what we're doing. Bigger, smaller, this is what we're doing. This is what we have. And that's fine. Everybody makes their Mishloach Manot as they make their Mishloach Manot. This gives us a very profound appreciation of how the whole Mishloach Manot works. Now, there's another element over here. This is like another, like in the Sefer Ein B'Deleach, he brings down that the Gemara in Brachas tells in Daf Lamed Ches that when a person drinks wine expands the appetite. And this Abaya drank a lot of fine wine. and all of a sudden he had a new appetite. He was eating. This is already kind of leading into, we're going, the line, the progression here is going from Mishloach Manot, we're going to be going into the meal. And actually, the next episode, we're going to go into the meal. And from the next episode, from the food exchange, then we're going to go into the next level of the meal, of how much you have to drink and so on and so forth. And so it continues to go. We're moving already from Mishloach Manot, from the food giving, into the way the meal actually is experienced. But in this way of understanding it, everything fits together. It all frames. Now, I'm going to have to tell you the truth. Maybe this is not accurate. This is my personal understanding. I came up with this myself. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but I think this Pasha gives you pshat. Because this is Pasha, and the funny thing is, there's mamash no mafarshim on this. I was looking for mafarshim. There's no mafarshim. I did find that there's a sefer called Reich Dudoyim from the Din of Rebbe. So I'm going to share with you a few interesting things from what the Din of Rebbe taught in the sefer Reich Dudoyim on Masechet Megillah. I'll share with you a few interesting things, and after I shared with you what I said on a level of pshat, I think maybe you'll understand, you'll be able to appreciate more what the Reich Dudaim says also. So I'll share that with you in a minute. Yes, you had a question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The ginger and the pepper would have to be made something into, as opposed to, like, aren't we with Mishloach Manot, give them something that you can eat right
You could eat ginger. You can eat ginger, but it's not a meal.
Right,
But that's exactly the point. So if you give somebody a candy or a plate of chocolates, is that a meal?
no, but you can eat it right away.
You can eat ginger. He ate the ginger. Was prepared ginger. You can eat ginger. Usually people eat ginger with something. When it comes with your sushi, eating it between the sushi. It's not a. Nobody said, "What did you have for dinner?" I had ginger. Really? It's not dinner. You maybe chewed on ginger. It was an interesting taste. I personally like the ginger, but it's not a meal. So the Reich Dudoyim says like this. He says, "Bepashtos, you have to understand that these stories are not stam, like, they're not just stories. They're teaching you halachas." And he actually goes through, he says, let's say the previous story. What do we learn from the previous story? One of the chidushim I shared with you in the previous episode was that wine or beverages could be used for Mishloach Manot. Why shouldn't it be used? So the Reich Dudaim says a gewaldige thing. Monos, the word monos, portions, shows up before in the scripture. Where does it show up? It shows up with a man named Elkanah. Elkanah goes to Shiloh, which is a Beis HaMikdash. Elkanah has two wives, his wife Penina and a wife named Chana. And it says that he loves Chana, and Chana and Nebuch doesn't have any children. Penina has a big family. Chana doesn't have any children. So Elkanah feels terrible. He gives her extra portions, and he's trying to always do nice things. But he says, the Reich Dudaim says that wine, especially in those days, women did not drink wine. There was a man, it was a guy thing. The woman didn't drink wine. So he says the manos over there don't include wine. So you might think that the manos over there don't include wine. So the novelty is, no. If it's a davar haroi le'ish, that works also. That works in Mishloach Manot. And then he says like this: you would think that the raw meat can't be eaten the way it's eaten. You can't fill the Mishloach Manot. You could. It's tough meat. We said like last week, you have to put it in the cholent for 24 hours if you want to soften it up. Doesn't matter. Then he says like this. He says that in the story we're learning this week, that the Mishloach Manot of Ishler Yehu, sending to somebody who's of the same station, same standing in life, you would think that you have to send him according to his standing. This is like what I said, this is what I saw over here. And he says, number one, he sends Abai as a shliach. There's a lot of people who think that you have to send a child as a shliach. People think that children have to be delivered Mishloach Manot. So it's not true. It's not true. We see this because Abaya not only was not a child, but he was also a big Talmud Chacham. And there's nothing wrong with having a Talmud Chacham deliver your Mishloach Manot because it's a mitzvah. It's not demeaning. Delivering Mishloach Manot is not a demeaning job. It's just fine because it's a mitzvah. And you could use a Talmud Chacham to do this. There's nothing wrong if Rava sends a Abaya. Nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. That's number one, he says. He says, number two, another thing we can learn from this, and this is again, I came up with this idea, but then I saw it ratifies what I said. He says, we see Mishloach Manot doesn't have to be something exotic. You give Mishloach Manot according to what you give Mishloach Manot. He says that clear. Yetzim mishlech manas hafilu b'dvarim hamitzuyim. Ve'enim dvarim chashuvim. So you take a box of tam-tams, and you take a can of pop. Yeah. It works. Is that what most people do for Mishloach Manot? No. But it doesn't matter. It works. That's the message. It works, right? He says the other thing is, he says you give the best that you could give. How do you know? Because Mari Barav didn't say, well, he sends me peanuts, he sends me dates. I'll send him back figs. No, he gave him the best that he could give. He's a rich man. He sent him ginger. He sent him these fancy peppers. It's not a meal, but you know what? You can eat it. You make a bracha on it. It's nice. So he says, even if there's things that are not like a meal, it still works. It still works. And he says, another thing that people make the mistake of thinking, that Mishloach Manot has to be candy. Because Rashi said, Divrei Mesika, sweet things. It could be sharp things also. B'dvaru charifim. It doesn't have to be. It could be sour pickles. It also works. And then he says, from the story with Abaya, we can see that the mitzvah of the day is to eat a lot. Abaya ate already. I had breakfast. Yeah, but come on, it's Purim. Look what I have for you. No problem. One, a second, a third, and so on and so forth. And another thing we could see over here, that even if you're full, if you're eating because the food is delicious, it's not called achila gasa. It's not called stuffing yourself. It's not called stuffing. Eating dessert is not called stuffing yourself. There's always room for dessert. There's always room for something delicious. So this is the pshat. This is on a pshat level. And I don't know, if you ask me, I think this is beautiful. It's especially beautiful because it's a story in the Gemara, and it just fits so sweet. It's just so nice. It's geschmack. It has a message. It's a very practical message. It gives us an understanding of how Mishloach Manot works. And this is the beauty of Torah. The Torah gives you a little nice rav, a story of what the sages did. And you analyze the story, and you think about the story. You say, wow. So that's how we learn the jurisprudence, the halacha of how this functions. And just having come, if you didn't learn anything else about Purim, you came to last week's Gemara class, you listened to last week's class, you watched last week's class, you watched this week's class, you have a well-rounded appreciation of what Mishloach Manot is. Just from two little stories, from the retorts. This sage said this, and this sage said that. This one made this remark, and does that. Just from the little banter, from the little remarks, everything comes together. Now, the Ben Yehoyada suggests a beautiful thing, fascinating thing. He says it was actually a custom to have 60 different kinds of food on Purim. Why? What's 60? So 60 tractates of the Talmud. And the Ben Yehoyada says that we know that the Jewish people, that when they accepted the Torah upon themselves for real, was on Purim. Kimu v'kibla Yehudim, that the first time we were under duress, like we were swept off our feet, as Alter Rebbe explains in the Likutei Torah. Hashem showed us all these revelations. Euphemistically, it's referred to as a mountain overhead, but it just means like we were swept off our feet. We didn't really know what we're doing, but on Purim, we knew exactly what we're doing, and we had a target on our back. And had we said we're out, we could have gone free, but we didn't. We chose Hashem. And he said that's called kimu v'kiblu. It's like re-accepting the Torah, like a real affirmation of Torah. So he said, therefore, Purim is a celebration of Torah. It's interesting. In Shulchan Aruch it says that you should begin the Purim meal by studying Torah. That's what it says. You should actually study Torah before Purim, because Purim is about Torah. Now, Purim is also about Adar and drinking wine, and that's in there. We're going to be getting to that in the future episodes. That's Seder. We'll get to that with God's help. But on a very base level, there's the idea of Torah. And yes, a lot like the Reich Dudayim says, a lot of food. In the Chanami, Taka eat a lot of food. And the food is symbolic. Just like we have the Montashen, which is symbolic of Esther's fast and so on and so forth. And she ate zironim, she ate seeds, that's what she ate. So there's and it represents it's a pocket. It's not Haman's ears and it's not Haman's hat. That's baloney. But this idea of a pocket, that's a pocket. You look on the outside, you see it's a phyllo dough, and inside that's where the taste is, and like things are hidden. In Purim's messages that oftentimes it seems that the world is on autopilot, or this magistrate or this royal or this elected officials controlling the world. Hashem controls the world. That's the message of Purim. So he said this: the message of Purim is that idea of food, which is Torah, is called Torotcha b'toch mei'ai. The Torah is like in my innards. I digest the Torah. I digest ideas that becomes a part of me. That you should do it in the image of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the 60 Masechtot of Talmud. Now, all of this is pshat. It's pshat. It's pshat. But now I'll tell you a little bit of drush. So the Reich Dodoyim says a tremendous thing. He says, why is it? Think about it. He says, what did Rabbi choose? He chose the dates, and he chose the granola. What's with the dates and the granola? He says like this. The difference between the dates and the granola, the palm tree is very tall. It's very tall, and the reason it gets sweet is because it's right there up in the sun. The dates are baking in the sun, which causes it to be sweetened. And it's a natural sweetness. So that's what everything's clear. You see it up in the heavens. You'll get the big treetops, and it's a reish dikla, the top of the tree. That's where it's getting sweetened by Hashem's hand. He said, then we have the concept of the granola which is coming from the ground. And he said, that's not naturally sweet. That has to be sweetened. That's where our efforts come in. And he says this is like Hashem's miracle, where Hashem gives us the sweetness naturally, and then sometimes we have to create that sweetness. We have to be able to take it out of the ground. And he said we have to be able to strip away the nature. He uses a euphemism from the Megillah. He says, Vayasar hamelech es tabato. The king took off his ring. He says the word tabato also is the same Hebrew letters as tivo, as nature. You have to be able to strip away the cover of nature. You have to peel away the nature. To reveal the innate goodness and the sweetness that's actually Hashem encodes into life, but don't see it openly. So he says what Rabbi was really giving was the message of Purim. The message of Purim, which is bridging the sweet dates that come naturally and the granola that's bitter and has been taken out of the ground, and you have to make the effort, you have to create it. So that's what Rabbi was bridging together. It's gewaldige Wort. Now, the Chassam Sofer, he asks a lot of questions. He's very unhappy with this whole Gemara. He says, come on, he says, what is Gemara teaching us over here? I personally don't understand the Chassam Sofer's question. I think we could learn a lot of things. But anyway, that's what he says. Then he says, it sounds crazy. He ate 60 dishes. How many dishes could you eat? Okay. Chassam Sofer is a holy Jew. He didn't know, what did he eat? He ate some Hebrew food. 60 delicacies. How much could you eat? Again, I understand the question. If it's very delicious food, you eat a little bit of sushi and a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of this whole exotic stuff, right? There's a little piece of everything. Okay. And he said, what's up with the last dish was the pan roasted. The last dish, what is it? Who cares? And he says, and then he wanted to eat the plate? What's up with that? If I could eat the plate, I would eat the plate. What is going on over here? So the Chassam Sofer explains all of this on a euphemistic level. And he says like this. He says that Rabbi was learning Torah. Abai was learning Torah by Rabbi. And he learned so much Torah, he was satiated, he filled. Came to Mari Barav. Mari Barav was an exil arch. And Itaka wasn't a Rosh Hashiva, but he was also a Torah Jew. He was also a Torah teacher. And all of a sudden, he saw that he could learn from Mari Barav too. And Mari Barav learned Torah from this Masechet, and from that Masechet. He was teaching him halacha from every Masechet. And every Masechet, 60 tractates, similar to what the number 60, what the Ben Yoda says. And he said, and he was eating, and he realized, no, with Torah you don't get full. You can hear a different kind of Torah. You can learn a different message of Torah. And then he came to the last lesson that we're learning, Masechet Pesachim. Masechet Pesachim, it says, B'chlal, you're not allowed to ask a teacher halacha that he's not learning. You make him uncomfortable. That's not where he is, not where his head is. So you have to, he sets the tone. But there's an exception, and that is before Yom Tov. Before Yom Tov, you can ask any shaila that's connected to Yom Tov. So he came in the morning of Purim. He wanted to talk about Pesach. He said, give me more, I'll eat the plate. And he said, no, that's only after Purim. So after the Purim Suda, even though Purim is exactly 30 days before, you can still eat matzah on Purim. It's not yet. It's only after Purim. That's when the 30 days begin. That's the way he explains the pshat in this whole thing. And he said like this. So that's an important halacha about. Now the truth is, when I was learning this Chassam Sofer, I remembered that the Rebbe has a beautiful explanation on the idea of the mun, that it says about the manna that Hashem gave you. He says vayachilcha vayarivecha. He fed you the manna and he starved you. So like what does that mean? The Rebbe explains that man is lechem min hashamayim, it's bread from heaven. It's a euphemism for Torah. And bread from sustenance comes from the ground, so you eat till satiation, and then that's it. Then it becomes a chilagasa. You eat like a glutton. But he says, food that comes from heaven, Torah, you never get filled with Torah. You never have, it's too much Torah, I can't learn anymore. On the contrary, the more you have, the more questions you have. And the hungrier you get. That's the nature. The nature of Torah is the more you eat, the less satisfying it is. Torah is never satisfies Torah. As it says, Shlomo HaMelech said, Yosef Deya, Yosef Machayev. The more knowledge you have, the more pain you have. You want now you really don't understand. Now you don't understand on a whole different levels. It's like Al-Derech said, the same kind of thing. This is when it comes to eating, this idea of Torah. So he thought he came satiated, but actually he came full. So now we have a beautiful appreciation of the mitzvah B'Shlach Manot. We have a mitzvah. We're going into the Sudat Purim, and Bezrat Hashem, in the next episode, we're going to focus on how the Mishloach Manot can directly actually feed the feast, and we'll hear about a feast that turned fatal, and how this is going to be an encapsulation of what the Purim feast is about, what it is, what it should be, what it shouldn't be, and so on and so forth. It's to be continued. And that, my dear friends, is all she wrote for tonight. Thank you for joining. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Please share. And everybody, thank you for coming this evening. Please keep on coming. Laila Tov.